Imagine a calm afternoon at the Grayson household. Debbie steps outside, holding a plate of food she'd just prepared. Her eyes widen in surprise as she sees Oliver, Mark's younger brother, showing off his developing Viltrumite abilities. Mark, always quick with a joke, teases Oliver, calling him his new sidekick. Debbie smiles but quickly ushers them inside, the tone shifting as she begins to express her concerns. She sits them down, explaining that Oliver's powers, while impressive, could be dangerous because he's still so young and inexperienced. Oliver looks puzzled, asking how they could be dangerous. Debbie clarifies, warning that his strength could easily hurt someone if he doesn't learn to hold back. Mark, recalling his own experiences, notes that she wasn't this cautious with him. Debbie reminds him that his father, Nolan, helped guide him through those early days. Mark, ever confident, says he can guide Oliver too. But Debbie counters with a reminder that Mark is still a college student, juggling his studies and superhero responsibilities. The conversation takes a sharp turn when Mark suggests quitting school altogether. He admits he's failing most of his classes and argues that Cecil's financial support as a superhero pays more than he'd ever earn in a traditional career. Debbie firmly shuts down the idea, insisting he stay in school. Frustrated, Mark demands a good reason why he shouldn't quit, but Debbie remains silent, the tension lingering in the air. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, Rex Splode is undergoing a significant change. After losing his hand in a fight with Komodo Dragon, he's fitted with a new artificial hand. This advanced prosthetic not only restores his mobility, but enhances his abilities, allowing him to charge objects with potential energy more efficiently. Eve stops by to visit him, and their conversation shifts to Mark. Rex mentions that Mark is no longer with Amber, news that visibly surprises Eve. In Utah, the Immortal meets with Cecil, struggling to cope with the recent loss of his wife, who was killed by the Lizard League. Their discussion is interrupted by urgent news of a projectile hurtling toward Earth from deep space. Immortal springs into action, flying to orbit to intercept it. Cecil's team analyzes the object and determines it's an organic being. Back at the Grayson home, the argument between Debbie and Mark continues. They're interrupted by a call from Cecil, who urgently needs Mark's help in space. Mark suits up and heads out. In Earth's orbit, the organic projectile reveals itself to be Alan the alien. Immortal arrives first and, mistaking Alan for a threat, attacks him. Alan defends himself, commenting that Immortal's initial attack barely hurt him. Immortal, furious, refuses to back down, and the two clash in a fierce battle. Mark arrives just in time to intervene. He surprises Alan, allowing Immortal to land a hit. As Alan charges again, Mark steps between them, confusing Immortal. Alan, unable to communicate with Immortal due to the lack of telepathy, explains the misunderstanding to Mark. Mark quickly clears things up, and Alan stops fighting. He then asks to speak with Mark privately on Earth. They retreat to Mark's dorm room, where Alan shares critical information. He explains how Mark's actions have inspired the coalition of planets in their fight against the Viltrumites. Alan recounts a harrowing encounter where he was nearly killed by 3 Viltrumites after reporting back to the coalition. He notes that the experience made him stronger, which Mark acknowledges, noticing Alan's larger physique. Alan confides that he only trusts Thetis now, suspecting a spy within the coalition. He invites Mark to join him on Telescria, but Mark declines. Their conversation is interrupted when Mark's roommate, William, walks in and quickly leaves after seeing the intense discussion. Mark opens up to Alan about his father, Nolan, revealing his capture and impending execution. He also shares the existence of his younger brother, Oliver. Handing over Nolan's book, Mark watches as Alan scans its contents, confirming the truth of its stories. With this newfound information, Alan departs for Telescria, determined to continue the fight. In Utah, Immortal's grief reaches a breaking point. Overwhelmed by the loss of his wife and the pressures of leadership, he announces his resignation as the leader of the Guardians of the Globe. Cecil, always pragmatic, immediately contacts his secretary to appoint Robot as the new leader. Back at the dorm, Mark tries to focus on his homework. William, still curious about Alan, asks Mark to give him a heads up the next time Alan visits. A knock at the door interrupts them. William answers, revealing Eve standing there. She walks in, surprising Mark by asking if they're dating now that he's single. William steps out of the room to grab a snack, leaving Mark and Eve alone. The air is thick with anticipation as Eve finally breaks the silence, bringing up the question of where they stand in terms of intimacy. She looks at Mark, searching for answers. Mark, slightly hesitant, admits that he would have called her, but he had just ended his relationship with Amber and needed some time to process everything. Eve begins to open up, her voice tinged with vulnerability. She confesses that she started liking Mark while she was still with Rex. Her feelings only deepened after Rex cheated on her with Kate, and Mark was there to support her. However, when she learned that Mark was dating Amber, she felt conflicted. In her confusion, she didn't reject William when he asked her out, even though her heart wasn't truly in it. She continues, revealing that her decision to leave for Africa wasn't just about helping others. It was also about creating distance from Mark. Yet, despite the miles between them, she missed him deeply. Eve admits that when Mark invited her to join him, she had hoped he would come alone, as a sign that he felt the same way about her as she did about him. Finally, she asks Mark directly if he wants to take their relationship to the next level. Mark, caught off guard but not entirely surprised, explains that an older version of Eve had already told him how she felt. She had urged him to share his feelings with the Eve of his timeline to give her closure. Eve, clearly shaken, asks if Mark had feelings for her before the future Eve told him. Mark's uncertainty is written all over his face, and his lack of a clear answer leaves Eve heartbroken. Without another word, she gets up and leaves. Moments later, William returns to the room, holding a cheeseburger. He immediately notices the tension and asks what happened, mentioning that Eve was crying on her way out. Mark, avoiding the question, buries himself in his homework as William sits down and starts eating. And that's where we'll leave it for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Invincible, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into your favorite comics. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this chapter and what you're excited to see next. See you in the next video.